Hello, so I hit Diamond 1 yesterday, listed this up on masterduel.com. I really wasn't gonna record anything for a while because I'm just so sick of seeing tier element art and the cards and all that stuff, so I really just wanted to unplug from Yu-Gi-Oh for a while and just not think about Master Duel, not open it. But since the list went up on Master Duel Meta, I've got a bunch of questions in the Discord, the Master Duel Discord, about my list and about the approach I took. So I just thought maybe I, just record a video quickly talking through my deck building and just my thoughts on the season overall. So yeah, you can check out the list on the website and read my write-up. Just trying to explain some things, but people still had questions, so I just thought maybe I just do this video real quick, summarizing the season. So I'm gonna switch to the game now. Okay, so I think I'll just talk through each card here. So this is the final list that I took to Diamond 1. I did make some changes from the Diamond 5 list, which I didn't show but ultimately ended up looking quite similar. So the two main changes were I went from 11 Crusadia monsters to 13 in this list, and I added an extra kaiju, took away Red Reboot, and yeah, I only play like 5 mechs in this version, whereas initially I had I think 3 purple and 1 blue. So I'll explain some of the choices in a bit. Let's start with this card. So Maxi, okay, so first off, let me just say, if you read the write-up on the website, you'll know I really am not that confident about this list as a whole. I'm not, I've never claimed that any of my lists were optimal, but this one in particular, the tech cards, I wasn't sure about. Obviously, as you know, I only started playing against tier elements literally at the start of this season, so literally 5 days ago. That was my first, 6 days ago. Wait, no, 7 days ago. That was my first experience with tiers. So I basically figured out the matchup and how to counter it within this past week, right? So none of this is optimal, I would claim. And some of the ones that I have more doubts about, I'll talk about. And actually, Maxi is one of the first ones. So, okay, wait. Oh, and also one more thing. The climb to Diamond 5, I would say, was very varied, as Platinum always is. There's always a bunch of different decks, and it's actually more fun than climbing a Diamond, which is really sweaty. But once you hit Diamond 5, then in Diamond 5, that's again like the Wild West. You have a lot of different matchups. Once you hit Diamond 4 and you start climbing Diamond 1, it's like 80% tier all the way up to Diamond 2, and then in Diamond 2 it was more like 50% tier, 50% flu or something like that, right? Flu Wanderies. So flu Wanderies. So yeah, overall I would say the approach I took was definitely to build 4 tiers, but not to build an anti-tier deck, which would naturally involve stuff like Fissure and Shifter, the floodgates, right? But I personally hate floodgates anyway, so I was never gonna play them. But if I were to sort of hard counter tier, I'm not sure that would, if I'd done that, I'm not sure I would have climbed as quickly as I did, because I'm just really not sure in general in a best of 1 about hard building to counter like a certain matchup. It's just you see too many different things here, and even though this is tier 0, it's not like it's 100% tier. There's actually I wouldn't even say 80% on the way up. It's more like 60-70% tiers, and then the rest is like Flu, Exosister, Branded. I even faced Runic a couple times. Oh yeah, and Sprite. Sprite was surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, quite prevalent. Okay, and anyway, all statistics are made up, so the ballpark numbers I just gave, 60, 70, 80, just you get the picture, right? So anyway, Maxi honestly isn't amazing against tiers. The main reason is they'll give you maybe 2 draws if you chain it to Sharon, and they'll stop on Kit, because they really don't need to extend beyond Kit. Sure, they may not get the full suite of back row that way, but it's a lot better than giving you enough cards to counter them, because Kit is gonna come out, and then they'll probably just search Hafnis and then get ready for your turn. So Maxi gives you maximum 2 draws in most cases. Some of the tiers players that I faced actually took the Maxi challenge, and then I was able to out the board, but they probably took it not expecting a blind second matchup, right? Numeron is pretty common now apparently, but in general, if a tier player were to take the Maxi challenge, they maybe weren't expecting to just get beaten by someone who has like so many different outs for the deck. So yeah, in any case, I think Maxi is a mixed bag still, because you get 2 draws maximum, and the downside is a lot of them are playing triple tactics talent, maybe even three of them. So yeah, if you draw 2 and then they drop TTT and they just look at your hand and then maybe strip out the Crusadia in your hand, then there's no OTK next turn and then you're finished, right? So I'm really not sure about Maxi. Maybe the other option is to just drop it in the standby phase or the draw phase and just playing around TTT. But then if it's not tier, then it's something like Branded Despy or something. Then, well, I don't know. It depends on what the player does. Sometimes if you drop it in draw and standby phase, they just pass on an empty board and give it back. And in this build, an empty board is a bit more troublesome, although there are options to play through that, as I'll talk about in a bit. But yeah, so I'm just not convinced about Maxi, but it's the most powerful card in the game, so I just kept it in, and it's not like it really hurt me against tiers. 2 cards drawn is better than nothing, and triple tactics hurts, but they only have it like 36% of the time, so it's not that bad. Yeah, it just sucks when they do drop TTT on you, and then they just like when I draw Maxi, I think I'm gonna win, but then they drop TTT and then I don't win. That kind of sucks. But yeah, so you can make your call on whether you want to play Maxi at all, and especially because Flu is so prevalent, you get a deck card in that matchup automatically. But then it's still good against Despia and Sprite and Exo Sister. So that's up to you. But I personally, it would take a lot for me to not play Maxi just because it's the most powerful card in the game. Okay, so Crusadia lineup. I went from 11 to 13. Initially I thought 11 was okay, and I was playing more Mekk-Knights as well. But I sort of came to the realization that it's just a lot better to try and end the duel on turn 2. The way I built this deck, there's absolutely no sustain. You look at the extra deck, there's absolutely no way of outgrinding tiers. And even if I were to play my good old World Legacy Secret, there's no guarantee it can stop tier. Like, yeah, okay, you negate Kit Kalas, and maybe if Indigo's on the board, I can negate one more monster, so maybe I negate, I don't know, like the Rhino Heart that they normal summon. But then, is that really enough to stop them from building on turn 3 and just killing me? I'm not so sure, so I'm not doing it. And also, yeah, this is reliant on the revive, so unless you can get Indigo on the field and then keep Indigo on the field, in which case you only actually get 1 negate, sorry, I misspoke, then what's the value in this, and can you really outgrind tiers? So I'm not sure. So the entire approach I took here was just end the duel on turn 2, otherwise go into Astrum, hopefully with IP, although IP really isn't needed in the tiers matchup anyway, but just in general, OTK or go into IP Astrum or Scoop. That's basically the game plan here. It's very all in, it's very boom bust. I really don't like this play style at all, but I found that it was probably the most efficient way to deal with this meta. And yeah, I mean, I climbed in like 6 days, and it didn't take that long from Plat 5 to Diamond 5 at all. But then from Diamond 5 to Diamond 1, I think I deranked twice. So once from 4 to 5, and then once from 3 to 4. But yeah, other than that, it would have taken probably a lot longer otherwise. So I just thought maybe the OTK approach would be the best way to do it. But, I could be wrong, and maybe someone will find a better way of playing Crusadia against tiers. So because I went all in on the OTK stuff, it just made more sense to try and guarantee this Magus search, because the Magus search is the key to ensuring that I get Maximus in hand, and of course on the board, because Maximus absolutely needs to hit the board, my end board basically, which is Equimex pointing to a Maximus, and then pointing to hopefully a Kaiju or one of the other monsters. That's the general Crusadia end board, right? So I need to guarantee Maximus. So because of that, I bumped up the Crusadia count by 2 to 13, just to try and ensure that I can get to Magus more often. Why not 15? Some may ask. So I actually talk about this a little bit in the write-up as well. Okay, actually I'll get to that in a bit as well. Just let me go one by one. So 2 Reclusia, 3 Arborea, 3 Leonis, 2 Draco, and 3 Maximus. Actually, let me start with Draco, right? Draco, unfortunately, our beloved Imduk, is very low value right now. In a more normal environment, Draco would be the best main deck Crusadia monster, because, you know, recursion from the grave, well, not recursion, but revival from the grave, in a sense, you know, fetch something from the grave back to hand, you know, helps you not fall behind in card advantage. It's the best main deck Crusadia, but this effect is never gonna trigger now. I mean, I'm not gonna say never, but maybe most of the time you don't get to fetch anything from the grave. They're gonna shuffle it back. So Draco essentially becomes a vanilla card, basically, like no effect. And that's the same for, well, most other... Okay, so you have to think about the phases, right? You have the build-up phase, where you normal summon a Crusadia, and then you start link climbing into Equimex. Maximus and Leonis effects are really only applicable in the battle phase, in the OTK phase. They don't do anything in the build-up phase, their effects, right? So the main deck Crusadia monsters have very low value. The best normal summon generally has always been Arborea in my mind. So even when I played like fewer Crusadias, if I ever played 3 of a single Crusadia, which I did in the past, it was always 3 Arborea, because Arborea is the best normal summon. Right now, especially with Pillar Reino, they can pop a monster if they shuffle back a card. Arborea and Grave protects your Magus from being popped, right? And in general, Arborea just, protects Magus, protects your normal summon from destruction. Ghost Ogre and whatnot. I can't think of any others off the top of my head. I'm not even thinking right now, but yeah, so Arborea is the best normal summon simply because she secures the build-up phase. So that's why she's at 3. Leonis and Maximus are also at 3. Very simple reason. For Maximus, well, I don't even need to mention, right? I mean, he is the OTK enabler. Without him, there's very little chance you OTK. There are alternative win cons for OTKing in this deck, which is why I've played a few of these other cards. But Maximus in general is the priority search of Magus, and it's good to open Maximus anyway, because the way I've built this list, I have many ways of getting to Equimex without having to do the Magus climb. So that's also why I don't play 15 Crusadia cards. Crusadia cards are really low value. You open 3 Crusadias in your hand, as I've said before, in other seasons you're basically gonna lose, because you're not gonna have enough value to match all of the card advantage that your opponent has. But here, for me, I've chosen to just OTK through Equimex, ride or die. I play a bit more Crusadias, but I still try not to overload on them because they're just really poor value in hand. Only difference being Maximus and Leonis, great to open in hand. Well, okay, so again, Maximus is for the OTK. Leonis is because the tournaments, most players reasonably would summon all of their fusions in defense position, unless you've already committed a monster and therefore you can't lightning storm them or something like that. Then they on your turn, on turn 2, they may summon off a Halfness Mill or something in attack position, but for the most part they will all be in defense position. And Kitkalis' defense is, I think, 1200, if I'm not mistaken. So actually I don't even, yeah, okay, whatever, it doesn't even matter. So Kikalis' defense is low, I know, and the rest of the tier cards, yeah, 2000 defense, etc. So Leonis' piercing is gonna be quite useful in many cases, and generally speaking, it's always nice to just open one of them and then be able to search the other. These two are the main sort of monsters you would summon under Equimax on the OTK M board. So that's why I play 3 of them, because I really would be happy to open them. So I said Draco had very little value. Why? Because yeah, can't fetch. So honestly, I would have been happy just playing 1, because it's a situation where you only search Draco if you know if they don't have any issues with shufflers in the grave, and you can guarantee the Draco search. Then I would search Draco off Magus, and then get that monster back from the grave and be able to continue linking off without losing card advantage, and being able to keep up in the tempo, if you will. But that's only in the case of like non-tier matchups. It's not that often. But I played 2 simply because I have no problem in this case normal summoning Draco, foregoing the Draco search anyway, searching Maximus off Magus, and then having like 2 other monsters to sort of make up Equimax, and then get and then get Maximus under Equimax for the OTK. So the 2 copies of Draco here are just to sort of make up the numbers for ensuring that I get a normal summon into Magus play. And again, Magus is simply a means to an end. The end being Equimax pointing to a Maximus. So Maximus is the priority search at all times. Yeah, and again, if I wasn't clear, like if I open Maximus, I would probably search a Leonis, if I can get all those monster bodies on board. And even if I can't guarantee getting to Equimax, just ending on Regulex with a Maximus, can sometimes OTK, especially because nowadays tiers are playing Cyberstein and going into Exterio, so they end up with only 3,000 life points, which makes it a lot easier to just OTK with Regulex. Regulex and pointing to Leonis and pointing to a Kaiju. Leonis' effect triggers, gives Regulex piercing, and Regulex just pierces the Cyberstein that they left on the field. I did that a lot of times. So that's why I search Leonis if I don't have it, and I search Maximus if I don't have it, but I would always prioritize Maximus. But again, okay, it really depends on the board state, I would say. But these 2 are the main monsters you want to search, so 3 of each of them. And then Reclusia, I actually never used Reclusia's Pop this season. Last season I used Reclusia's Pop all the time because of Vanguard, Crusadia Vanguard, but this season pops are not, well, I didn't really find any value in popping, because you pop the tiers, you trigger their effects, and you pop other matchups like I don't know, Flu, you pop their back row, or you pop their Empen or something. That's not great value unless Arborea is engraved. Then I can protect Reclusia's pop on itself, and then I don't lose a body, right? But in general, Reclusia's pop is just very low value. Again, it's just at 2 because I want to make up the numbers for Magus. So that's the whole idea behind 13. And I did run the math. I always use math in my deck building. So with 15 Crusadias, actually let me pull up my thing. So with 15 Crusadias, you get 95% chance of opening at least 1. With 13 Crusadias, it's a 92% chance. So, I play 2 fewer Crusadias and I only lose like 3% in consistency. That's 3 games out of 100. I'll take that, because the Crusadia, the pure 15 card Crusadia player may have their combo in those 3 more games, but there's no guarantee they actually win those 3 games where they have the combo. And in all the other games where they do have the full combo, because of the standard Crusadia list being so linear and just very one-dimensional, I think their win rate with the 15 Crusadias is gonna be actually lower than a list with a lot more options. That's always been my belief, and that's why I continue to not play 15 Crusadias and continue to play Mekk-Knight Crusadia, even in an OTK variant, because having all these different summons and options wins me a lot more games and helps me deal with a lot more situations. Okay, well, apologies again if I'm just rambling and all over the place. No script, one take, and I really wasn't even planning on making a video, but I just wanted to, share my findings and results. So yeah, bear with me, and as always, you can just ask questions in the comments or ask in the Discord, and I'll answer them. Okay, so that's the Crusadias, right? 13 Crusadias, yada yada. Also for interest, just for the math side, right? Talking about the pure Crusadia list. So let's say a pure standard Crusadia OTK list, Kaiju Crusadia OTK list. It's 15 Crusadias, and the prescribed one is like 9 Kaijus. So that's 24. Okay, let's just say that's 24 summons normally, and I'm just going to leave out like Parallel Exceed and Format Skipper for the sake of this example, this thought experiment. But so you have 24 summonable monsters, and if you just ignore the board breaking side of things, how often do you open full combo, like 1 Crusadia and 1 Kaiju? Well, if you use the math, if you use the calculator, 1 Crusadia and 1 Kaiju, 15 Crusadias and 9 Kaijus in deck, that's a 76% chance. And then you have also the alternative, which is 2 Crusadias. So that's any 2 Crusadias, so that's a 74% chance. Those numbers are actually not that high, right, for you to actually open full combo. I don't actually have the full calculation here for that, for the consistency of a normal Crusadia deck, but for my deck, for this list in particular, full combo is basically I open 2 Crusadias, I open 1 Crusadia and 1 Mekk-Knight, or I open 1 Crusadia and 1 Kaiju, right? So my overall probability of opening full combo is actually 93%. So in 93% of games, I should have at least 1 Crusadia and 1 special summon, either the second Crusadia or a Mekk-Knight or a Kaiju. This is leaving out all the board breakers, right? So, in 7 games out of 100, I don't get the Magus combo. I think that's pretty consistent. Some people say, oh, what's with this? You're affecting your consistency by mixing Mekk-Knights in. Why aren't you just hard committing to 15 Crusadias? Well, the consistency drop off isn't as great as people make it out to be if you actually run the math. So yeah, that's that. Okay, so Mekk-Knights. Why did I keep the Mekk-Knights in an OTK strategy? Blue Sky. Okay, so initially I played 3 purple and 1 blue, right? But purple is just a searcher, and the whole value of purple comes from, well, at least in my experience, purple returning on turn 4 if you're going second. So your first turn is turn 2, you banish purple and search blue, right? Then purple comes back on turn 4, and then suddenly you're plussing like crazy over your opponent. That's how like the Mekk-Knight engine usually benefits my deck. But in this case, it's an OTK deck. It just wants to OTK on turn 2. So purple's value is actually just as a unique Mekk-Knight name. The real sauce is Blue Sky, the world hero. Sorry, the world hero before Astrum became the world hero, right? But Blue Sky is the real sauce, and Blue Sky is so good because, especially with tiers, they're stacking the board. You often get like 2 cards in the same column. So, okay, and this isn't like a psychological meta game discussion, but when they mill both decks, they mill their deck and your deck with Agido and what's the other one? Keldak? Yeah. They'll sometimes mill 1 Crusadia and 1 Mekk-Knight. If they only mill Mekk-Knights, they will go all out to stop Blue Sky, because they'll think this is a Mekk-Knight deck, so I'm gonna stop your searcher. Or they'll just try and stop Purple Nightfall, right? So if you open both purple and blue, that's even better. But in a lot of cases, because I played 13 Crusadias, they mill at least 1 Crusadia and then also a Mekk-Knight, or they just mill Crusadias and then I summon Blue Sky, who is a Mekk-Knight, and then they know that this is not a pure Mekk-Knight deck, and they know that you're playing Crusadia because you want to OTK. So they may not stop blue sky. They may give you 2 draws, and that happened to me quite a few times because they're like thinking, oh crap, what do I stop? Do I stop the Mekk-Knight pluses, or do I stop the Magius into Maximus search? So they're like kind of fretting, and this is again the whole reason why I play Mekk-Knight Crusadia, because I have 2 different lines that they can't stop. I try and explain this many times, but people just don't see the value. I mean, maybe I should like put up some replays of like just pure Crusadia against tier. Actually, no, I don't think I'll do that. That's a waste of time. You know, okay, so I'll just tell you from my experience and just all my years of playing Crusadia, that this is what I believe is better for the deck. It does make it less consistent, but you're gonna win more games overall. That's just my experience. So yeah, again, if they don't stop blue sky, usually I can search 2. So red moon, indigo, or purple, doesn't matter. Yeah, and then so that's why I played 2 blue sky instead of like just 1 blue sky and then 3 purple, because why rely on the purple search blue sky? Purple could get ashed, then purple just sits there, and then you don't get blue sky's OP +2, or +1 or +2, depending on how many cards they have in that column. So you know, when you can +2 big bodies, big Mekk-Knight bodies of blue sky, and you also have blue sky's body still on the board, that's amazing. That's a lot of card advantage for a deck like Crusadia that's usually starving for resources. And so often the extra bodies could be the difference between winning and not. Yeah, and blue sky is the only Mekk-Knight that can chain block Magius as well. So I like to go like normal summon any Crusadia, go into Magius, special summon blue sky under, and then chain block Magius. Then you know, they have, I mean, unless if they have Solic and all that stuff, that's a different matter. But just for the chain blocking aspect, like blue sky is great. So I would much rather open blue sky than open purple. I would like blue sky to be my first special summon under Magius in most cases. And again, yeah, the pluses are amazing. So yeah, so that's the blue sky. Red moon is just here as an extra name. You could play yellow star, but red moon being monster destruction, I think is a bit more useful in more matchups, because you know, a lot of times when you're facing like stun decks with like 5 set back row, what do you really destroy with yellow star? Which column do you summon it under, and are you sure you want to destroy that one? You know, and then they're just gonna solemn you with the other 4 set back row. So like, I just find red moon a bit more useful, but it's not that, there's not that much difference between the 2. Indigo is amazing. Alright, someone in the Mekk-Knight channel was like saying, well, the Mekk-Knights don't do anything for this list. That's false, because Mekk-Knights can't OTK. Well, pure Mekk-Knights usually can't OTK on an empty board. They can't even OTK in general. And pure Crusadia can't OTK on an empty board unless they have Exceed and they go into Update Jammer into Access Code, right? That's the usual, or Dugaris if they get like the 2 level 4s, either Exceed or like, you know, Maximus and Draco, blah blah blah. In this case with Mekk-Knights, sometimes people, you know, if they brick, for example, if they brick, they set 1 card and they just pass to you, blue sky adds indigo, that's OTK, because I go into Maximus, I go into any Crusadia, normal summon, go into Magius, blah blah blah, climb to Equimax, right? Equimax pointing to either Maximus or, well actually most of the time it's Maximus. I would just search Maximus off Magius, right? So I go into Equimax, pointing to a Maximus, then I special summon Indigo Eclipse right under Equimax, like vertically under him. First I go to battle phase. First I attack with Indigo Eclipse, and then I activate Indigo to shift into the other Equimax zone, and then Equimax gets boosted by Indigo's attack as well. So you basically get another 2400 on top of Indigo's already used up 2400 damage. So that's an OTK on an empty board. Equimax with Maximus with Indigo, and you can search Indigo with blue sky immediately if they set a card. So you know, there's a lot of these applications, and Indigo has always been for me like the most reliable like OTK, empty board OTK win condition for my Mekk-Knight Crusadia decks throughout the seasons, especially when I play more copies of blue sky, more copies of purple nightfall. It's very easy to get to Indigo and then do the Equimax Indigo OTK. So I don't know why people say Indigo doesn't do anything for Crusadia. especially when we play Equimax with the zone. Like Indigo is the most useful Mekk-Knight for a Crusadia OTK strategy. That's just my opinion. That's just my experience. And yeah, purple is just to search blue in this case. And then yeah, I don't like purple as much in an OTK list because yeah, you lose the body. Purple vanishes, whereas blue stays on the field and then fetches like the rest, right? If you special summon blue, you can search purple and indigo immediately, as opposed to purple vanishing, and then if you don't get disrupted, you get blue, and then blue summons, and then it's just an extra step and an extra point of interaction where your opponent can disrupt you. But I play 2 blue and 1 purple instead of like just 3 blue and 1 purple or 3 blue and no purple, etc. because Mekk-Knights special summon only once per turn, per name. So yeah, this just allows me to have higher value hands where I don't have redundant cards. That's really important. So why 5 Mekk-Knights in total? The Mekk-Knights, I basically arrived at 5 just from messing around with the other ratios, like messing with the Crusader ratios, messing with the tech card ratios. So 5 is not like some number I've magically derived. But in general, for my deck building, if you see my list, I have basically 2 main archetype engines in my deck, right? Crusadia and Mekk-Knight. I'll never go below 5 for either archetype, so I've always had at least 5 Crusadias, and then now that I've cut down on the Mekk-Knights, I have 5 Mekk-Knights. That gives a 57% chance of drawing at least 1. So you get to see him at least half the time, more than half the time. If it's 4, you see it 49% of the time, if I recall correctly. These numbers I know because I've run the math so many times. But yeah, so 4 gives you 50% of the time. The 5th one bumps you up to 57% of the time. You see him about half the time. I'm okay with that. Especially when, again, I don't need the Mekk-Knights necessarily, but it's just a nice to have if I open a Mekk-Knight alongside the Crusadias. It's just a nice to have. It opens up so many more ways to interact with the opponent. And again, the whole idea of playing these 2 archetypes together is you get 2 unique lines, so your opponent doesn't know what to shut down. And I always lead with the Mekk-Knights, so they'll be like, oh my goodness, it's the purple Nightfall, it's the one that searches imperm. Or if I have both of them, oh no, blue sky is gonna give him plus 2, add 3 cards, imperm. So they'll try and crash down hard to stop the Mekk-Knights, and then the normal summon route with the Crusadias is completely open, and then I just OTK, right? So Mekk-Knights do add a lot to a Crusadia strategy. If you don't already do that, I suggest you try. Convention is 15 Crusadias and just like a lot of kaijus and board breakers, and then revival and then power and all that stuff. But if you play the convention, you're only gonna get average results. That's just how it works, right? Everybody's playing the same, then you'll just get like the same results as everybody else. And the average result for pure Crusadia really isn't that good. It isn't that high. I'm not saying it can't get to Diamond 1. In fact, I really expect at least another Crusadia player to get to Diamond 1 on masterduelmeta.com this season, because Crusadia does have a decentish matchup against tiers. But it's just gonna take a bit more effort, because you're gonna have a lot more problems solving other game states that are not tiers. For example, Flu, for example, Brandon, or for example, just like even Exo Sister, right? If you're just gonna live or die by the normal summon, you hard commit your entire game plan with the first normal summon of the Crusadia, they remove it and then it's GG for you. But you play a supporting engine like Mekk-Knights, they're gonna try and clamp down hard on the Mekk-Knights, and then they'll use up all their interactions, the disruptions, and then you just normal summon and then go OTK. Trust me, there's a lot more value than most people would think. And again, like I said, if you just stick to the convention, you get average results. So, okay, 6 kaijus. I was initially playing 4, then I bumped it up to 5, then I bumped it up to 6. Honestly, I'm not sure what the best number is. What's the probability if you have 6? It's 64%, 64% chance of drawing at least one kaiju with 6. With 5, it's a 57% chance, as I mentioned. So it's a significant increase in the chance of drawing a kaiju by bumping it up to 6 for me. The problem with kaiju is it's essentially a heart once per turn, and I keep stressing this. This is why I say even in a pure OTK Crusadia deck, I would never play 9 kaijus. I would never play the 7 to 9 kaijus that everybody recommends, because your hand, first off, your deck is overcommitted to one particular heart once per turn option. Yes, kaiju is important. It's in fact critical to the Crusadia OTK, but if it's heart once per turn and you draw and you open 3, then what are you gonna do with the third one? Yeah, you just link them off. You're not getting that much value out of the kaijus that way. You rather just have more board breakers. So historically I've always played around 4 or 5 maximum, but I bumped it up to 6 just because the kaijus are actually a really good option now against tiers, because again, with tiers you want to remove their names from the board. That's the best way to disable their back row. But in most cases they're gonna have 2 names, or they'll have elf in one name and then elf summons Merly on your turn, and then they have 2 names and then they combo off, blah blah blah. So they're gonna have more than just one name. This is not like a Kashtira thing where you just get rid of one boss monster and a lot of things open up. No, you have to get rid of multiple boss monsters on the board. And if you open too many kaijus, or you play too many kaijus and you open too many of them, you can only use one of them to out one of the monsters, and then what? And then you're finished. The other boss monsters will deal with you, or you won't fully you won't disable their back row because they'll have more tier names on board, and then you're finished. So don't overcommit on playing kaijus, but they're extremely good. I'm not saying they're a bad option. I'm just saying don't overcommit. Don't build 7 to 9. Honestly, I'm not saying you can't win with that, but I feel like it's just not an efficient way of deck building, especially when there are other options for monster removal. So yeah, 6 kaijus. And why do I play the highest attack kaijus? It's only because tiers, again, they have multiple monsters on board, right? As I mentioned with the Regulex thing, Regulex OTK, especially with Cyberstein being played in a lot of tiers now, if you point to a high attack kaiju like this 3300 with Regulex, and then you just have a Leonis under, you're just gonna OTK them with Regulex. You don't even need to get to Equimax. With the piercing, even if they're monsters in defense position, you can pierce. Yeah, 4300 plus 1200 is 5500 attack. Sure, they might have a 2000 defense, but then that's still not enough because they're down to 3000 life points because they use Cyberstein. So it's, yeah, the high attack just gives you it increases your probability of winning against more types of boards. And if you're not in a situation where you need to use the kaiju and attack some other monster, if you're just attacking into the kaiju, then the attack doesn't even matter. So why not just play the highest attack? Because it'll allow you to actually beat down more easily against multiple monster boards. And also why I play the highest attack kaijus is because of the other monster removal options that I'm playing, Mind Control and Change of Heart, right? So again, instead of playing 9 kaijus, you can play 5 or 6 kaijus and then just play more of these spells. So these ones, again, just removing tier names from their board. It's the most efficient way of dealing with them. That way you don't have to rely on the back row destruction. And I'll talk about back row destruction as well. But yeah, this you can think about. Don't think of it as 6 kaijus and then 3 Mind Control and 2 Change of Heart. Think of it as just 11 options for monster removal. 12 if you include triple tactics. So 12 unique, well sorry, not 12 unique, but 12 copies of single monster removal options, and then enough variants. You have 6 kaijus once per turn, but then these are not once per turn at all. So you can open 2 of these, or a Mind Control and a Change of Heart, and that's still a good hand. You can use all of those cards. So that's why don't overcommit to the kaijus, I always say. So yeah, but I maxed out the copies of Mind Control and Change of Heart basically, because again, I'm just trying to get rid of tier names. I get that, you know, all my breakers are actually ultra rares, so this is gonna be a bit expensive for some people. I've heard of people using like enemy controller as a cheaper option. The tribute is a bit costly, but it's definitely cheap, so you can try that. But yeah, so mind control and change of heart are absolutely cracked. And again, with the high attack kaijus, sometimes they'll have one monster on board. I kaiju the monster immediately, and then I just go to Equimax, and then I steal the kaiju back from them and put them under like Equimax's like zone, and then I can OTK with like a Mekk-Knight and Equimax pointing to Kaiju and Maximus, right? So there's a lot of synergy between having a Kaiju and then having like multiple ways of stealing monsters as well, because you just steal a Kaiju and you can do a lot more damage as well. So yeah, I would consider this a synergy actually. Instead of playing 9 Kaijus, play like fewer Kaijus and then add some of these monster removal options that potentially allow you to steal the Kaiju over to your side of the field. So yeah, I don't think I need to say more about this. I think you've seen in the replay how this works. It's great, and if actually that wasn't in the replay, then I'll probably have a replay or two showing the power of mind control and change of heart in this particular meta. So yeah, triple tactics is just cracked as hell, but it is hard once per turn, and I was weighing the trade-off. Like, you know, I would play 3. I can just craft them, obviously, you know, I have enough gems, but I never really felt the need to go above 1, because it's just like, to me, it's just like an extra copy of mind control and change of heart for this particular setup, because I'm never gonna use the effect to look at the hand and shuffle 1 back. Even if they have halfness, I'd rather just play through it. Like, I don't foresee myself ever needing to use that effect. So it's really just about the taking control of 1 monster. Yeah, maybe draw 2 would be good, but there's no guarantee that I draw into 2 cards that actually help me OTK. So for the most part, like, I'm just looking at this second effect, and in that case, it's no different from really a mind control or change of heart, except that it doesn't target, right? So that's a huge thing. But again, it being heart once per turn, why not just play 3 mind control and 2 change of heart that are not once per turn? And then just, if I open TTT as well, then that's just like, oh wow, 3 different options of stealing monsters. It's just a happy bonus. So that's the idea behind this. But again, triple tactics is so cracked. Like, if you want to just play 3 to ensure that you open it more often, sure, right? You can even steal an Astrum with it. That's how good it is, right? Okay, so back row destruction. This is the most controversial side deck. I'm sorry, not side deck. Tech option for me. I feel like it's necessary to play back row destruction still because of all the flu brand that's still around. Sprite, I guess, in a sense as well, and of course all the stun. Now, fissure doesn't really affect me. Necro value doesn't really affect me, right? But set droplets, set imperm, set solemn judgment, all that stuff, that hurts. So I decided to just keep in back row destruction just to deal with all the other matchups that I do indeed face on the ladder. And of course, Lightning Storm can also double as monster destruction, but against tiers in particular. So using any of these against the back row gives them halfness if they didn't already have them. But often they go in a kit and then they grab halfness or something, or they just end up somehow getting halfness in hand anyway before my turn. So in those cases, destroying their back row actually doesn't hurt that much because they already have halfness. So then usually what they do is they search like Reno or maybe a Sharon or something, and that extra search off the back row destruction doesn't hurt me at all. So it's only in very specific cases where they somehow don't have halfness that the back row destruction becomes a bit dicier, because yeah, I get rid of all their back row, great, but then I give them halfness, and then they're just going to combo into Dragos Tapelia or a Kaleido Heart and then get rid of my Crusadia Link, and then I'm finished, right? So there is definitely a risk factor with Lightning Storm and Duster, but they solve a lot of other problems. And I feel like, yeah, you know, without them, the deck's a lot more one-dimensional. It can only deal with basically monster threats. And I don't like to build decks that are so one-dimensional. I like to be able to cover a wider variety of matchups and game states and situations. So having backrow destruction I think is pretty good. Some people say, oh, Lightning Storm hard once per turn and only if you control no face-up cards, so they like to play just one. I think one is okay if you just treat it as like a substitute for Duster, so you just think of it as like 2 Dusters, something like that. And some people play 2 because they're like, oh, I only want to draw 1, all that stuff, but if you check out the math, like that's not really rational. So I would say play 3, 1 or 0, and I play 3 because I'm always happy to see Lightning Storm in my hand. Over time, I just sort of made peace with the fact that if I get them Hafnis, I'll take the gamble. I'll let them use Hafnis, mill 3, and we'll see if they mill something good. Because actually sometimes, in fact quite a number of times, the Hafnis doesn't even mill anything, and then I just continue OTKing and nothing happens. So yeah, Hafnis to hand from backrow destruction is really not a death sentence, and I was happy with that gamble, or that trade-off, if you will. But yeah, again, I would just say like, yeah, this was the one that I was most iffy about, but I feel really that if I didn't have backrow destruction, I probably wouldn't have climbed as quickly. I wouldn't have been able to deal with Flu, because again, Flu and Branded and Mekk-Knight, all these decks, I call them multi-phase decks because their board is like the initial board that you face on turn 2 is not the full board, right? It's a multiple phase sort of boss battle. You get rid of all their monsters on the field, but they still flip the back row and they summon more monsters, right? In Branded's case, you know, let's say you kaiju Mirror Jade, great. They flip Branded in red, they flip Banishment, and they get Mirror Jade or and like Dragos Tepelia or like Chimera or something on the field again, and you have to deal with that again. With Flu, let's say they have Empen on board, you blow up Empen or you tribute Empen with a kaiju. They flip what's that, Dreaming Town, and then they just go into Avian, or they can even go into Empen plus Avian if they have the cards for it, and then you have to deal with that again. So these sort of multiple phase. Oh yeah, and with Mekk-Knight, obviously the most obvious one, the monster that you face on turn 2 is gonna be like nothing most of the time, but then they flip Super Factorial and they bring out Laplacian, and then you have to deal with like the Laplacian again. So, and then Laplacian has an Omni Negate. Right, so these multi-phase decks, the best way to deal with them, in my experience so far, has been to blow up all their back row and force them to show you the full board immediately. Turn their multi-phase strategy into a single phase. Put all their, like basically force them into putting all their cards on the board. Then you deal with that board. That for me has been my way of dealing with like Flu and Branded and Mekk-Knight and all that stuff, right? The multi-phase decks. So because of this, like backrow destruction is just so important. Yeah, it just simplifies a lot of game states, and it just simplifies a lot of the win cons. I couldn't justify dropping them, but you may be fine dropping them. You know, you may have a different experience. I'm just sharing my experience. Okay, and finally, wait, how long is this? I don't even know how long I've been talking. Oh crap, that's a long time. Okay, anyway, so finally, Imperm. Imperm is another one that I was kind of debating dropping, but because we have to be real here, Crusadia's power level is not high. You increase your win probability a lot if you can force them to end on an inferior board, on a smaller board, or like on a partially developed game state. So Imperm on Kit Kalas is a fantastic disruption. It forces them to just, yeah. Usually if I Imperm Kit Kalas, like I win. Like I can get rid of, you know, I kaiju Kit Kalas and then I just OTK, blah blah blah. They don't get to do all their searching for Hafnis or Sulliek, all that stuff. It just simplifies everything and it just makes the matchup a lot more winnable. So Imperm is just incredibly powerful. Against Flu, you see, with Flu, as I mentioned, you want to get the backrow destruction to force them into a single phase game state. But if you just Imperm the Eglin and they don't have Advent, then yeah, they pass on Robina and Eglin, and then you just OTK them even easier, right? Because they're so small and you just kaiju one of them and then it's so easy. So Imperm just solves a lot of matchups, and it just, yeah, I think Imperm wins a lot of games. so I keep it at 3. And in my opinion, the best hand traps right now, I would say number 1 Imperm, because it deals a flu, and number 2 Maxi, because it's the most powerful card in the game, but it is a brick against flu. And as I mentioned, like, it's not amazing against tiers either. But yeah, and then third would be like Ash, I guess. But then I don't play Ash or Call By in this list because I don't care about if they drop Maxi, I just let them draw like crazy and then I just OTK through the Maxi. Take the Maxi challenge every time because this is an OTK or a bust deck. So I saw a list I saw a Diamond 5 list without Imperm and without Maxi, right? So no hand traps and it's just all board breakers. I think that could work too, you know, because yeah, as long as you have enough options. Oh yeah, sorry, that player was playing like 3 Silent Graveyard. So again, I don't like Floodgate, so I don't do that. And also, I don't know about that discard cost, so I didn't want to play that. I never even tried it. But theoretically, I don't see why you couldn't just play 0 hand traps and then just, in place of these 6 hand traps, just play more board breakers. Or play more like Engine and whatnot, I don't know, up to you. I think it's still fine. So yeah, that's just all of the main deck stuff. Extra deck is really self-explanatory, I think. I really only summon like 9 or 10 of these. Lip is here because of nostalgia and because, well, you know, she's always been in my deck. She's the best World Legacy card, period. I can't go into her obviously with this list, but I just kept her here because I didn't even need anything else. Borolo sometimes came up, summoned a few times. Unicorn never. But the rest is just like, yeah, Crusadia OTK, very simple. So why Brute Enforcer? Because of the 2 link arrows. It could be anything else. I think I only used this effect once, and when I used it I lost the game anyway, so I'm not saying this is a win con or anything, but just because of the arrows here, it allows me to go into Astrum without triggering effects, without triggering any sort of effects. I can just because with Sparta you'd have to shift and then you trigger an effect, but here I can just, you know, go into this and then just summon 2 Crusadias under and then go into IP and then go into Astrum, right? So it's really just here for the link arrows. So yeah, again about the triggering effects, if you read my write-up, I would have mentioned Rukalos is a non-threat. It's a non-factor in this matchup because every single one of the monsters is an inherent special summon. They don't start a chain, they don't trigger an effect to summon. You just pop them on the board and they can't do anything about it. So Rukalos does nothing. And more importantly, Hafnis doesn't, you know, they can't chain Hafnis to any of your summons because they're all inherent summons. So that's why I think the matchup is actually good, because we can ignore a lot of their threats. The main threats are the back row, as I've previously mentioned. So yeah, you try to avoid like triggering effects if you can. Of course, you can't avoid by the time you get to Maximus, right? But the hope is that, you know, let's say you open Maximus and you can just get to the Equimax OTK condition without triggering any effects up to then. Then if they activate Hafnis to they chain Hafnis to your Maximus effect for the OTK, they mill something, they summon something, you can still use Equimax's negate, tribute off Maximus, and negate the boss monster that they summon, let's say Kaleido Heart, to bounce your Equimax. You can still do that, and so you can still win. And of course with the Mekk-Knights offering extra bodies, and of course the Monster Steels offering extra bodies, well, you can still OTK, you can still have enough damage. So I think overall, like, in terms of consistency, I'm pretty happy with it. In terms of stealing, it's not great because, you know, it's just an OTK deck, nothing more. And in terms of coherence, I think this list has a lot of coherence. There's a lot of synergy. The Kaijus and the Monster Steels, the Mekk-Knights offering bodies, and the Monster Steels themselves offering bodies. So that's why I mentioned right at the start of this long discussion that I didn't always have to go into Magus. If I open Maximus, like I can normal summon Crusadia, it gets bounced, you know, I special summon Blue Sky, you know, I get 2 bodies on board, I steal a monster from them, I go into Equimax, I special summon Maximus under Equimax, I can still OTK, no problem. So there's a lot of synergy and I quite like how it worked, how it functioned. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say. This I thought I only talked for 20 minutes, but it's been like an hour, so I'm gonna stop here. But hopefully this clarifies a lot of things about, a lot of questions about why I build it this way. And again, sorry if it's very rambly and long-winded and just meandering in different directions. I had no plans to do this until like I started doing it. So yeah, just post in the comments if you have any further questions, and hopefully I can get to them. Yeah, let me just think real quick if there's anything else I want to say. So yeah, so again, Tyr's matchup is decent. Not worried about much except Halfness and the back row, and only worried about Halfness because Halfness threatens by chaining after you've committed to a summon, or usually chaining after you've committed to Magius. So you already have your monster, you already have your Crusadia Link chain going. Then they chain Halfness and they go into Kaleido Heart, or they go into Decklist Apelia. Then that's a new threat that I have to deal with. And then I can't use Imperm anymore because I already have a monster on board. I can't use Lightning Storm because, you know, again, I already have a monster on board. And I've probably already used my Kaiju, so I will need to rely on Mind Control and Change of Heart, etc. So when those monsters come out, when those boss monsters hit the board in the middle of my combo, that's when it's the most threatening. So Halfness is a big concern. And then Sulliek, obviously, and Scream, right? Sulliek and Scream are huge concerns. So that's why the strategy is all around taking tier names away from them and trying not to trigger monster effects on the field. Wait, no, sorry. Just trying not to trigger monster effects, period, until the very final stage with Maximus's effect to OTK, where you can actually use Equimax to negate a boss monster that comes on the field. So yeah, if you just keep those in mind and play the matchup, understanding that back row and Halfness are the main threats, and then you sort of like gauge the value of different interactions, you know, whether or not it's okay to clear the back row. If they already have Halfness, go ahead and just Lightning Storm clear the back row. Who cares? They already have Halfness, you have to deal with her. But now you can get rid of Sulliek and all the other crap, and they sometimes set like Droplet. You can clear all that crap and then just face whatever it is on the board. Face whatever is face up on the board. So it's a lot simpler that way. So yeah, you just play the matchup with those thoughts in mind, and then yeah, I think it should be pretty straightforward. I honestly don't know if you actually need replays, because again, this is just the standard Unga Bunga Crusadia OTK, right? I'm not sure what you'll learn from replays. Let me know if you really want to see replays. I might try and play a few games and just show you how it works or something. But I really didn't record that many because I was just so sick of this climb, so sick of seeing tiers everywhere. It's like everybody's just playing tiers or Floodgate Turbo. Yeah, it's a really boring meta. So yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Alright.